Our coverage tonight begins in Nigeria's capital, where the Economic Community of West African States Authority of Heads of State and Government have reiterated its commitment to resist the proliferation of military takeovers in the West African sub-region. Now, this was during the 64th Ordinary Session and Summit of the authority, which held in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, where members present vowed to protect democracy and condemned the deteriorating security situation being witnessed in several member states. News Central's Amadin was there and tells us more.
It is the 64th Ordinary Session of the Authority of Heads of State and Government of the ECOWAS sub-region. In attendance are representatives of West African states, many of them led by their president.
This summit is taking place at a very significant moment in our sub-region. Not just in our region alone, but globally. We are confronted with the challenge of democratic consolidation, economic difficulties, climate change crisis, and food insecurity, among others.
President Bola Tinubu, who chairs the authority, emphasized the need for good governance and the rule of law among West African states as a catalyst for peace and prosperity.
As a people, we aspire to create a borderless, peaceful, prosperous, and cohesive region, but on good governance and the rule of law, where people will have the opportunity to realize their full potential for sustainable development.
The authority also took time to express worry over the security situation in several states of the sub-region.
Security in the region is the focal point, and we must achieve this regardless of other commitments.
The situation in Niger arguably remains the most concerning political security development, which has impacted peace and security in the Sahel with implications for the entire region.
The Authority of Heads of State and Governments have commended the elections, these successful elections, in Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. In fact, the Authority of Heads of State and Government gave the Liberian President George Weah a standing ovation for conceding defeat. They also took time to condemn the violence in Guinea-Bissau and Sierra Leone, and also the proliferation of military takeovers in West Africa. They say this is taking its toll on citizens and has served as a veritable tool to destabilize the sub-region.
The standoff between the military leaders in Niger and several partners, particularly ECOWAS, have significantly increased the challenges facing the populations of the country.
The message must go down clearly that we will support a democratically elected government, not on constitutional exercises, without let of hindrance. Democracy must win if we fight for it, and we will definitely fight for democracy.
Amadin reporting for News Central.
Interesting words from Nigeria's president. Let's look some more at what happened right there at the ECOWAS meeting. To discuss this, we're joined tonight by Global Affairs Analyst Calvin Dark, that is. He joins us from Washington, D.C. Calvin, it's great to have you. Let's start with this. As far as you're concerned, what specific measures did the President Bola Tinubu highlight as essential components of good governance in order to prevent coups that we've seen spike in recent months and years in West Africa during his speech at that ECOWAS session?
Yes, good to be here. Thank you for having me. I think that what he said that most resonated with me, as far as, what does it mean to have good governance, is to make sure that the people feel that the institutions that are being run by the people they elect are responsive to them. And of course, that the biggest two concerns would be economic prosperity. When there's economic problems, obviously people have less faith in the institutions. Also, when there are security challenges, when people don't feel safe, they then look to that government. And I think that if you look at the democracy in West Africa, in Europe, in the United States, all around the world, the essential part is that the people who are being governed feel that the people governing them are really listening to them. And when they don't feel they're listening to them, and when they feel that the lack of prosperity is because the the elected leaders aren't listening to them, then that's when we have problems with democracy. And so I think that's something very important that was pointed out about what good governance means.
Interesting. But how do you think President, or how does President Bola Tinubu's emphasis on prioritizing good governance align with the the politics of the day at play in Nigeria, where his president, a country just came out of an election recently? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that what we all have to remember is that his words or nothing at that meeting happened in a vacuum, meaning that every word they said, particularly when prioritizing good governments, people are naturally going to think about the series of coups that have happened in the region and the state of democracy in Nigeria. It's going to point back to, those principles of good governance that he mentioned. How are they being played out in people's lives? What's lacking, and what are the people elected to fix it doing to address that? And so I think that it's kind of like we say here in the United States, preaching to the choir. The president wasn't just preaching to the region, but he was also reflecting on what the responsibilities he and other elected leaders have in Nigeria.
Let's, for a moment, look at the response or the reaction of the Authority of Heads of State of ECOWAS to the elections in Liberia, where George Weah lost as an incumbent president and he considered defeat. We hear that the heads of state, led by Bola Tinubu, gave him a standing ovation. What are your thoughts on that?
I think they were reiterating what democracy is. When I was in school, one of my political science professors gave me a very, very simple definition of democracy, and that is, can power change hands reasonably according to the needs and wants of the people? And so I think what we saw in Liberia is the definition of democracy, that power changed hands because the people asked for it, and those in power, the former president or soon to be former president, handed over that power. And so I think that what the ECOWAS leaders were recognizing is that is the essential part of democracy, that transition of power. And I just want to highlight, because, we talk about this problem in Western Africa, but we had that same problem here in the United States. One of the biggest contentious issues that we had in 2020 was that the former president refused to acknowledge that he had lost the election and that the newly elected president was legitimate. And we saw the problems that caused on January the 6th, 2021 here in this country. So it shows it's not just something in Africa, it's all over the world, and it's essential for every democracy that's going to thrive.
Quite interesting. Finally, based on the Nigerian president's statement as head or chairman of ECOWAS, he talked about collective prosperity, which can ensure political stability within ECOWAS. What are your thoughts on that? Can we see collective prosperity, stabilizing the region? It could be argued that sometimes you can have collective prosperity, but the political ideals at play in the various member states may lead to coups. So how important is collective prosperity, and how crucial it is in stabilizing West Africa democratically?
I think economic prosperity is the key to maintaining democracy, because democracy is a lot easier when there are no challenges. But economic challenges are challenges that everybody feels in a country, no matter what their socioeconomic class. And when people have to face those challenges, and when they feel that the people elected to serve them aren't addressing those challenges, people start to feel desperate. They start to feel angry. They start to want to express their displeasure at the system. And sometimes, if the democratic systems and institutions are not strong, groups of people backed by the military, for example, can seek to overthrow those institutions. And they are allowed to do that because people are displeased with them. So I think that economic prosperity is key, because when people feel that they are being prosperous in their homes with their families, they are more likely to insist on strong democratic institutions and democratic methods to elect those who run them, not military juntas or other examples we've seen in West Africa.
Interesting. Calvin Dark, thank you very much for your time. Calvin Dark is a global affairs analyst, and he joined us, of course, live from Washington, D.C.
Thank you.